We are at the B20 India Summit, and I am talking to Rajesh Gopinathan, who is the co-chair of India Task Force on Tech Digital Transformation. Rajesh, thank you very much for joining us on NDTV and BQ Prime. To start with, you made some certain recommendations. Can you take us through those recommendations for digital transformation?
Given the vastness of digital transformation, we are focused on making sure there is continuity between what has been done in the past B20s and what we are recommending, and focusing on how to ensure that the implementation is brought front and center. So there are four foundational areas that we're speaking about. First is connectivity. I'm saying connectivity should be seen the way we look at electricity. Today, governments globally think about providing good, reliable electric power as a fundamental requirement, both from an economy perspective as well as from a regular, societal perspective. We need to think about connectivity in the same way: universal connectivity, high quality, reliable, and future proof. And everything that we do on the regulatory environment needs to enable the deployment of this level of connectivity globally, and that's going to be a critical requirement for economy-wide transformation. That's number one. Number two is digital literacy. Similarly, education has always been a localized subject, but the sheer skill requirement and the portability of capabilities, if we can get the educational standards to a common minimum, is very high. So we are suggesting the creation of a global minimum standard for digital literacy, and some form of an institutional intervention to have accreditation at an institute and at a teacher level, so that skills that have been imparted can be relied on by industry and by businesses globally, so that we can confidently seek out talent anywhere in the ecosystem. Third is related to MSMEs. Traditionally, MSMEs have always lagged technology progress, and it has been a trickle down effect for technology adoption. There is an opportunity and a need to change that mindset and say that MSME technology adoption on the digital side should be kept apace with industry rather than seeing it as a trickle down effect. For that, making financing available to them when they want to invest in digital transformation, and also taking from the success of the India digital stack, making sure that basic digital toolkits on a sector specific level are made available for MSMEs to actually power their digital transformation. And last but not least, cybersecurity. Security will again be a sovereign subject, but if each of the 20 countries were to agree on a common minimum cybersecurity standard, the actual effectiveness of compliance will go up. Right now, the cost of compliance is very high. Effectiveness is probably slightly lagging. We could actually increase the efficiency of compliance so that we can actually take up the overall effectiveness of the cybersecurity side by harmonizing global cybersecurity standards. So these are the four main recommendations.
What kind of learnings that we have from the India digital stack which has been created? And how much of that can be actually, said tomorrow can be adopted very easily by the G20 countries as a base?
No, I think what we are suggesting in MSME is essentially a takeoff from the India digital stack. We are saying sector specific digital toolkit. Now, the India digital stack is actually an economy wide digital toolkit, because elements of it can be individually used by businesses, and businesses can innovate on top while government provides that infrastructure. We are suggesting that the same thing should be done in industry after industry, and whatever has been built by India, India has been offering it globally, that can be used. And in other industries, similar kind of investments need to be made. Some of those investments per se will be made by private players, and the government regulatory framework should be open to that and should govern that rather than prevent that or be afraid of it. So supply chain infrastructure in a manner in which the large global corporates will be the natural ones that will actually deliver that to a larger MSME. Govern that rather than regulate against it, and have the effective focus on what you want to govern rather than prevent it.
My question was on financing and investment, which was there, right? You spoke about briefly. Where will that financing come from? Which are the players that can be? I know Uday could have spoke about 0.2%, of your profits can be used for this purposes. But how do we make it much more uh, democratized with respect to financing of that and not depending just on the companies?
So, in fact, I believe that capital availability is the least of the problems. So capital is available. Now the issue that is there is that the user population is so heterogeneous that there is friction between the availability of capital and the actual access to the capital. If you try to create common standards, the ability for capital to find the right business will also increase, and then we need to have enabling mechanisms. So, like for the MSME, I think it should be as easy for them to get financing to make a digital investment as it is for them to today set up a factory. If you want to set up a factory, you're likely to get a loan because there is physical collateral and there is a regulatory environment for it. If you want to invest it in upgrading your IT systems, you're unlikely to get it as easily because the regulatory environment to actually think about whether this is real or not is currently lacking.
Isn't it even more better to look from a point of view of a supply chain point of view, like a big company which has hundreds of vendors, and those vendors will have hundreds of sub vendors which is there, and using tech stack to do it and integrate it? How easy is it for them to do it? And if I'm going to say that, okay, we're not just talking one country, we're talking across geographies. How do we reduce the frictions with respect to taxation, with respect to capital flows? All those things will have repercussions, right? Is there a way to reduce those frictions?
So, technology adoption at the MSME structure center is being driven in many instances through this kind of downward push from the large, the mega corporates at the top. What we're suggesting is that is the natural flow of things. So we need to regulate it, but we should not be. We should not be afraid of that, and we should actually encourage the formation of those networks and the standards that they put. But rather than every single person coming up with their own standard, it would be even better if those global standards are available. Then these networks can also start converging into those standards, and those standards can be effectively governed.
And what about use of new technology like AI and all? We are talking a lot of been talked about AI, how it can be used at the bottom of the pyramid. MSMEs. Means I was attending one of the Chandra's session where Shantanu was sharing it, and he was talking about how a lot of in the MSME space, a lot of AI can help them bring in more efficiency. How can that adaptation happen very easily for them, because they are already lagging behind on technology? We are talking of adoption of AI.
But typically, if you make access available, adoption by MSME is quite high. So, it's a very trivial example, but if you look at it today, no trader in India does not have a WhatsApp presence, right? For everyone by default will use that channel. So once something is available on an ease to use basis, there it was a technology ease to use. Similarly, if you make it available, MSMEs automatically, it is a very democratic environment. They will end up using it. So access and ease of use is a bigger driver. We don't need to encourage them to use it. They will use it as long as you make it available, and it is in a manner in which it cuts across boundaries.
Who will regulate that? Who will regulate it? That's a big question which everyone is asking actually, right?
But what do you want to regulate? That's the whole point. That regulate the networks in terms of think what is the governance that you want to achieve, right? So if you want to regulate at a data level, the data protection laws, that's fine. Keep it transparent, make it inclusive. So think about what you want to regulate rather than be afraid of the network, because the network is a reality of the digital future, and encourage the networks, but zoom out and regulate it at a meta level rather than at a micro level.
Rajesh, we have been talking
and
about,
also create the enabling blocks, so that certain blocks like KYC, the fundamental blocks, make it available in forms that can be consumed. So you're regulating from that side, you're regulating from the top side.
Rajesh, it was a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sajid. Thanks.